didn't work properly. We did not make enough, so to say, we did not properly invited. We just sent out one invitation, and we thought we are so important that everybody will come. But we should have repeatedly called them, sent who is coming, what is the program, and so on. But next time we will do. We have Wyzwolenie Szlach, Women Ukraine. We have Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe, and you have your national press. What is the name of your national? Lithuanian press. Oh. Lithuanian press. We have Iberian correspondence here with Madame Alshibaya. And we have the most important, we have our Swedish speaker, Mr. Hegman, who will be giving the answers. We have our Honorable Mr. Terlecki, who will be giving the answers. We have Professor Manino, who will give the answers. And
Italian press.
Italian press as well. Cultura, Cultura del Mondo. See? And we have Slava Stechko, who will be also giving the answers, if necessary.
And who is going to ask the questions?
Those from the press.
Right.
Yes. Be ready.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Let me first and foremost inform the press, although the press are the participants in our conference, but just to repeat and to inform the press that we are holding in the United Kingdom a conference on behalf of the European Freedom Council, and I, as the national chairman of the European Freedom Council United Kingdom Division, I'm very proud, honored and privileged to host this conference in Britain, and in particular in this Ukrainian club, which has offered us quite a lot of facilities and all the necessary amenities. And so far, from this morning onwards, I have been very impressed and indeed pleased that we have had so many representatives from different countries representing its own nationalities, from the Soviet Union, from the satellite states, from Baltic states, and indeed from Europe, and the British friends who have come to support us and participate in our discussion. And as you most probably have seen from the program, which the theme is a new challenge for the European nations, full stop. And why it is just a new challenge for the European nations, full stop, because the rest is in the program itself as to whom the challenge is referring to, namely challenge to the present Soviet government, to Mr. Gorbachev direct, and what our challenge and our aims should be to ensure that after decades and generations of waiting, being oppressed, tyrannized, executed, liquidated, right from the October Revolution of 1917 to the present time, we feel that it is high time that under Mr. Gorbachev's buzzwords, glasnost and perestroika, we ought to not capitalize on it, but to hold to Mr. Gorbachev, his two words, glasnost and perestroika, and take action accordingly that the openness and restructuring under those two words should become reality, appreciating and knowing that the reality cannot become a reality overnight or over a short period of time, but we must hold Mr. Gorbachev as a man responsible, first and foremost, inventing those two words, glasnost and perestroika, openness and restructuring, and demanding of him that restructuring and openness must be seen, to be seen in all the subjugated nations in the Soviet Union and satellite states. And therefore, I am very pleased indeed when one reads the two-day program of the Thursday, 8th of December 1988, although in different languages and touching perhaps on different subjects. However, their intention and their view and their determination is that in their lifetime, in our lifetime, to see that the old subjugated nations will benefit from this glasnost and perestroika. And it was interesting to note that when, after our president of the European Freedom Council, Mr. John Wilkinson, Member of Parliament for the United Kingdom, and the former Member of Parliament, Sir Freddie Bennett, spoke, and subsequently we have had a question and general discussion on various subjects, but always appertaining to the Soviet Union and Mr. Gorbachev, it was very noted and heartening to listen to various suggestive speakers who have spoke on issues and contributed to debate on issues such as Mr. Gorbachev and Mrs. Gorbachev is giving quite a good image through the Western press and the media, and how we can counteract that without being able to erase their images from the press or the media. And should we believe that the reform taking place in the Soviet Union is limited or is an open ending? Should or would at some stage the old guard take over the Soviet Union, and the overthrow Mr. Gorbachev, should he go too far with his policies, as the old guard did overthrow Mr. Khrushchev. Thank you. Also, it was muted and discussed. We unwrap that present, that packet, will we find something good, something interesting, something acceptable? Then it was also mentioned and spoken about the threat to Sweden and the North in general by the Soviet built-up military in conventional and nuclear force in the Kola Peninsula, as well as should the EFC, namely European Freedom Council, be skeptical about Mr. Gorbachev, that if he convinced the West of receiving sufficient financial help and credit to reappraise his economy, but to divert his own internal resources to build up and maintain his armed forces, will that not backfire, or could backfire subsequently against the West? It was mentioned by various speakers that within the Soviet Union and the satellite states, we have one of the most powerful republic, namely the Ukraine, with its 50 million plus people, as well as Poland, which are the most two powerful countries put together, and adding to it Belarusia, should they be in a position to rock the boat as hard and as often as the Baltic states are doing at the moment, then indeed the ice not only will be broken, but would crumble as far as Soviet Russia and its empire is concerned. So this conference today in the United Kingdom is of very, very important value because of the happenings that took place, the visit by Mr. and Mrs. Gorbachev to the United States, and there were different questions and opinions given as to the events within 24 hours. And I found it extremely stimulating that we are no longer, as Madam Stechko pointed out, are concerned of being afraid of Moscow. Now, Mr. Gorbachev's shoe is not on the top of the table in the United Nations, but very firm on his foot, namely that they are now afraid of the Ukraine and Poland and Baltic states and all other republics in the Soviet Union and satellite states, but not as it used to be a decade or two ago, where satellite states and the Soviet republics were afraid of Moscow. And I hope that we shall, as the European and United Kingdom division, European Freedom Council, will dedicate ourselves much more, not just in terms of speaking to each other and cry on each other's shoulders, but to take an active and positive role and spreading this truth and this gospel amongst our friends and neighbors through the press, through the media, through colleges, through universities, through trade unions, through local authorities, through members of parliament, may they be national or European, and not concentrate on a revolution of today. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a very great pleasure that before I call on our next speaker, I would like to welcome, who just arrived from Switzerland to join us here this afternoon, Madame Genevieve and Miss Genevieve. I'm sorry about my Ukrainian, Welsh, English pronunciation. Aubrey. So I never be an interpreter in grammatical terms. However, Madame, Sir, welcome to London and welcome to join us. Madame Aubrey is a member of the Swiss Parliament, as well as a member of the EFC Executive Board, as well as a chairman of the World Anti-Communist League. And who could be more appropriate to take part and participate and address us tomorrow than the lady herself. I also, on your behalf, wish to welcome Father Babik from Slovakia, and Father Sarevisius of Latvia. Lithuania. I beg your pardon. Please forgive me for my inefficiency in my mouth in the right way and the right direction. And now I will call upon Madam Slava Stichkova, who I am sure does not require an introduction, because not only she but her dear husband have gave their life for the cause of freedom and democracy, and how appropriate it is for the lady on my right, on my left, to address you. And after Mrs. Slava Stichko, I shall call upon Professor Leo Magnino I hope that's correct
Manino.
pronunciation. Manino of Italy, who will follow Madam Stitchko. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the Presidium, ladies and gentlemen, my theme is the disintegration of the USSR from within in light of recent developments. Today, nobody would dare to pretend that the national problem in the Soviet Union does not exist anymore, and that it gives Western politicians the right to address these 285 million people or more as a Soviet or Russian people. Oh no, not after the clashes between the Kazakh population and the Russian overlords in Kazakhstan, after the Crimean Tatar demonstrations in Moscow's Red Square demanding their right to return to their homeland, not after the Latvian demonstrations on March 9, 16, 25th, the latter with about 10,000 participants, and later demonstrations at which the national anthem was sung and the national flag carried. And what about the Lithuanians and Estonians? At the rally of the Estonian People's Front in Tallinn, 100,000 people participated, demanding economic independence from Moscow and the recognition of the Estonian language as the official language of the Estonian Republic, and it was recognized as official language now. In an unprecedented move, the Estonian Parliament on Wednesday, November 16, 1988, voted and declared the Estonian Republic sovereign, with the right to veto Soviet laws. By declaring sovereignty, the Estonian Parliament rejected the Kremlin's plans to modify. The vote on the declaration of sovereignty was 258 to 1 with 5 abstentions. The vote came several minutes after the Parliament voted on related amendments to the Estonian Constitution, which were adopted 254 to 7. The amendments voted into effect include one which gives Estonia the right to refuse to apply Soviet legislation in the Republic. Soviet laws can take effect in Estonia only as they write upon their registration by the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the Estonian Soviet Socialist Republic in a way regulated by it. The Declaration of Sovereignty does not declare complete independence of Estonia. It calls for a treaty to be negotiated with Moscow that would determine the further status of Estonia in comparison of the Soviet Union. The strategy of the Estonian activists rests on the traditional claim of the USSR to be a federation of independent republics with the right to secede from the Soviet Union. The passage of such measures by the official governing body of a republic is an unprecedented act of defiance of the central authorities in Moscow. A Ukrainian lawyer, Lev Lukyanenko, along with other national rights activists, formed a group in the 1960s whose goal was the independence of Ukraine. Secession from the Soviet Union was and remains a prerequisite to independence. All involved were arrested, and Lukyanenko remains in exile to this very day. There was no report or comment on the decisions of the Estonian parliament in the state-run media in Moscow. 300 Estonians have signed and sent to the Estonian Supreme Soviet a petition asking that in light of the proposed changes in the Soviet constitution, the Estonian SSR be declared an independent nation, separate from the Soviet Union. The Estonian National Independence Party stated the following on August 20th. I read, "Our demand for independence is not extremist. Rather, it is the most realistic, sober, illusion-free way out of our concerns and miseries. The future relations of independent Estonia with her eastern neighbor can only be based upon the February 2nd, 1920 peace treaty of Tartu. This treaty has lost none of its legal or essential value. Treaties like this do not lose their validity through forcible occupations. The end of quotations. In a clear violation of international law, the Hitler-Stalin Pact of 1939 led to the forcible military occupation and incorporation of Estonia, as well as the Baltic neighbors Latvia and Lithuania by Soviet Russia. Most Western nations do not recognize as legal or permanent this forcible seizure of three former democracies by the Soviet Russians. For its demonstration, marking the 40th anniversary of the largest mass deportation of Lithuanians, about 200,000 people, to Siberia, the League for the Liberation of Lithuania got tremendous support from the Lithuanian people. Between 15 to 20,000 Lithuanians and supporters from neighboring Latvia, 200,000 Lithuanians gathered in Gediminas Square in Vilnius on the evening of Saturday, October 22nd, carrying candles, torches, and the long band red, green, and yellow flags of free Lithuania. Lithuanians of all ages, old, young, children, on their fathers' shoulders, assembled in the square singing patriotic songs, which everyone knew by heart. The mood was of rapture and awe, as the people listened to long prohibited songs and poetry. Behind the square, half obscured by the haze of smoke and forest of flags, stood the old cathedral and Gediminas castle on the hill above, guardians of a sovereign Catholic nation. That same evening, the Lithuanian reform movement, Sajūdis, was holding its inaugural congress across the river from Gediminas Square in the assembly hall on the bank of the Neris. Sajūdis, formed 4 months ago, is an independent movement demanding reforms and radical changes in Lithuania, such as an autonomous Lithuanian administration, an economy with its own currency, Lithuanian citizenship, its own representation abroad, and its own army, including the rule that Lithuanian conscripts fulfill their national service on Lithuanian soil. The recent resurgence of Belarusian national assertiveness has affected not only the nation's writers, and the concerns of the nationally minded Belarusians go much further than the issue of the status of Belarusian language. What is so striking is the role of the youth in the Belarusian patriotic movement. Police and internal troops used tear gas and dogs to break up a demonstration of thousands of people in the Belarusian capital of Minsk on Sunday, October 3rd. The meeting attracted an estimated crowd of 10 to 30,000 people. Local groups had called the meeting to commemorate Belarusian victims, including the Minsk branch of Memorial, Martyrolog, artists and cinematographers unions. Another purpose of the rally was also to call for a popular front along the lines of popular fronts in the Baltic states. The fastly growing nationally minded organizations in Ukraine and the following mass meetings attest to the increasing national aspirations. Lviv, Western Ukraine's capital, February 22nd, Kremenchuk, March 6th, Odessa in March, Lviv in March, Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, on March 9 and 13, Lviv, March 17, and 31, Kyiv, April 26th, May 22nd, June 5th, June 9th, and 13th, Lviv, June 16th, 21st, 23rd, July 7th, Russia, July, were attended by approximately 50,000 people. The crowds shouted, "Freedom for Ukraine." The ecological situation in Ukraine has aroused tremendous protest. The Ukrainian Helsinki Union issued an appeal in November 1988 in which they state, and I read, "The time has come to put an end to the rapacious economical management of our country. First, we were forced to take pride in being the all-Russian granary, then the all-Union smithy or blast furnace. Today, Ukraine is becoming an all-Union reactor. 50% of all reactors are located, you should know, in Ukraine. And in future perspective, an all-Union or even a universal cemetery. Today, we are compelled to remind the rulers that this country has a master, its people, for whom this country is not only a means of fulfilling production plans, but was also a historical cradle in the past and homestead for a happy life for present and future generations." Glasnost has brought the belated truth about the terrible 1930s onto the page. Will be even more terrible if we only rejoice over the truth about the past. Just as the blood freezes in our veins when we hear about those 8 million lives taken by the artificial famine in 1933. But where is today's truth? Why is being stifled? The truth of 500,000 people who are among us today, but in the next 10 years, according to competent scholars, will be buried prematurely. And this as a result of only one reactor in Chernobyl. Yet, 50 such reactors are in store for us. Our country has a signed by the Executive Committee of the Ukrainian Helsinki Union. Effects of the nuclear disaster in Chernobyl of April 1986 and the current mysterious disease afflicting children in Chernihiv were just two of the disturbing reports presented at a mass demonstration in Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, on Sunday, November 13th. Around 20,000 people demonstrated in Kyiv against environmental pollution in the republic and spent 3 hours standing in zero temperatures, listening to speeches and reports by scientists, poets, and writers from all over Ukraine. On Tuesday evening, November the 1st, 1988, thousands of residents of western Ukraine's city of Lviv gathered in the Yanov cemetery to honor those who laid down their lives for Ukraine. The Yanov cemetery at one time contained many graves of the Sich riflemen, a military formation which fought for Ukraine independence during the War of Liberation 1917 to 1921. November the 1st is a memorable date in Ukraine's history. When the citizens of Lviv awoke on November the 1st, 1918, they found the city
Want to draw your attention for the next 15 minutes or so to give your close attention with full interest to one of our extremely distinguished gentlemen, Joseph Tarella, who I'm sure is very much in the minds of so many Ukrainians throughout the Western world, who he and his dear wife have suffered at the hands of the KGB prosecutors in Soviet Union, and who devoted his time to God and country, and with God's help and friends in the Ukraine and in the Western world, was able to come to the West, and here he is just as determined to speak the truth, to speak from the heart, as he did in the Ukraine, in front, on the back, and on the side of the KGB, never, ever concerned about his own life, about his own danger, or indeed his own dear wife, but stood for what he believed in. And he, I am sure, like we all, hope that when he and his dear wife returns back to the Ukraine, it will be to the free Ukraine, and around the free Ukraine to be other free satellite states, as well as the republic within the Soviet Union, that so many will be able to return to their free and independent country. What is more, without making a speech about Mr. Tarella, I like to say this, that apart having suffered and imprisoned by the KGB, he took the responsibility of being the chairman of the Committee of Defense of the Ukrainian Church. Now, it shows you the character and the caliber of the man, that he was not content of simply speaking on his own behalf about the subject and devotion to the faith he believed in. He took the responsibility of leading people as well to the forefront by being the chairman, as I say, of the defense of the Ukrainian Church. And so, on your behalf, it gives me a very great pleasure and great honor to ask Mr. Tarella to come and give us a short address. Thank you very much. Mr. Tarella is going to speak in Ukrainian, and then we shall have an interpreter who will be able to tell us everything about it in English. Thank you.
Перш за все, дорогі гості, дорогі друзі, я хочу вас привітати. Я радий, що ви мене прикликали сюди до вас. Перед початком я хочу сказати, що я походжу із комуністичної родини. Мій тато був особливим уповноваженим ЦК Політбюро України по боротьбі з українським буржуазним націоналізмом в Центральних Карпатах. Через нашу хату пройшли були майже всі нинішні міністри, які ще живуть. 22 роки щороку Хрущов відпочивав у нас на дачі разом з своєю дружиною. Мій тато був любимчиком Шелеста. Чого я це підкреслюю? Я виріс в сім'ї, де, не криючись, говорили про інтимні, глибокі справи комуністичної цієї імперії і держави.
First of all, dear friends, I wish to express my greetings to you, and I'm very pleased that you have welcomed me amongst yourselves. I foremostly want to say that I come from a communist family. My father was a principal, as it were, warrior who fought against the organization of the Ukrainian nationalists. During a period of 22 years, Khrushchev stayed at our abode, and so forth. This is just to outline that I grew up in a family where the theme of Ukrainian independence was always at the fore.
Саме комуністичне виховання і безоглядна ненависть до української нації привели мене в організацію українських націоналістів. В 16 років я вступив у українське підпілля.
It is precisely this background, this communist background that I grew in, and this hatred that I had for communism or against communism, that I was accepted into the organization of Ukrainian nationalists.
Я став членом організації українських націоналістів.
At the age of 16. He became a member of...
Одночасово я включився в підпільний католицький рух.
At the same time I engaged myself into the Ukrainian Catholic movement.
Я єдина людина, єдиний християнин, католик у Совєтському Союзі, якого 8 разів судили тільки за те, що я не підписав добровільну декларацію про добровільний перехід в лоно Руської православної церкви.
I'm the only Christian in the whole of the Soviet Union that was sentenced 8 times and imprisoned for the fact that I didn't sign the declaration to change my beliefs to the Russian Orthodox Church.
Нині багато говорять про перестройку і гласність.
They talk a lot today about perestroika and glasnost.
Але що за цим криється, ніхто собі не дає справи, не здає.
But what is actually behind this, nobody can imagine it.
Нині на Заході Горбачов став як новий месія, майже Христос.
Gorbachev has become almost a messiah in the West, almost on the level of Christ.
Але ні один політик Заходу не здає собі справи, що за 70 років гасла комуністичної імперії ніколи не мінялися. Не поміняв їх і нині Горбачов.
Nobody can imagine that for over 70 years that these slogans haven't changed, and in this way Gorbachev hasn't come with anything new.
Говорячи про перестройку, совєтський режим не знищив корінні зло Совєтської імперії, тобто систему концтаборів.
Speaking about perestroika, the Soviet regime has still not destroyed the root of the communist regime, that is, the concentration camps.
І який смисл говорити про то, в угоду Заходу, в угоду нинішній своїй політиці, Совєти викинули з Совєтського Союзу 20-30 віруючих, то ж самі зробили в тюрмах і таборах.
What's the point of talking about this when the Soviet Union has got rid of 30 political prisoners and they're doing the same in the concentration camps?
Саме під шумок гласності і перестройки йде небувалим тиском на національне життя всіх республік у Совєтському Союзі. Відбувається централізація режиму, яка не була навіть за часів Сталіна.
Under perestroika, there is the centralization of the whole system in such a way that it wasn't even like that under Stalin.
КГБ викинуло за кордон масу своїх людей, як офіцерів КГБ, які проходили спеціальні вишколи за 75 кілометрів від Москви у Бабушкіно.
The KGB has made a specific attempt to infiltrate the West completely. there are many KGB officers that are trained at Бабушкіно.
Мало того, в Бабушкіно совєтський режим побудував новий генеральний штаб під землею.
Apart from that, they've also, at this Babushkino where they're training the KGB officers, they've actually built a complex under the ground.
Люди, які розуміють, що таке генеральний штаб, і нам стає питання, чому совєти побудували генеральний штаб новий і саме під землею? До чого вони готуються?
Those who understand the situation ask themselves, why have they built a general staff underground? What are they preparing themselves for?
За 120 кілометрів від Байконура, від космічного совєтського центру, совєти побудували новий противокосмічний центр, якого нема ще нині навіть у Сполучених Штатах Америки. Це в місті Леніногорськ, який навіть не є на карті Совєтського Союзу.
In a place called Leninogorsk, 120 kilometers away from Baikonur, they've built a cosmic center, and this place actually isn't registered on any map of that region.
Під Прилуками будується нова ракетна база.
At Preluke, they are building a new atomic center.
В Карпатах у 87-му році в Закарпатті між Мукачевом і Міршавом вже побудували нову ракетну базу.
In the year 1987, in the Carpathian region and in the Transcarpathian region, they have already built a nuclear rocket site.
Склади, військові армійські склади у Совєтському Союзі на 10 років запаковані продуктами, амуніцією.
The military are prepared 10 years in advance with weaponry and ammunition for eventual war.
В спішному порядку совєти, викидаючи сюди агентуру, збирають технологію, комп'ютерну систему. І все те, що в техніці є нового, все то переправляється тайно і явно у Совєтський Союз.
All technology, all commercial items, these are all the newest technological inventions are all secretly abused, taken into the Soviet Union.
Чоловік моєї жінки працював у Байконурі, в космічному центрі. Він є полковник Совєтської армії. Його звідти забрали працювати у генеральний штаб. Так, чоловік моєї дружини, моєї сестри рідної.
The husband of my wife.
No, my sister.
The husband of my sister.
My sister
worked with an army.
До 87-го року працював замполітом в Байконурі, у космоцентрі.
He worked in one of these nuclear centers up till the year of 1987.
Він є один із кращих математиків був.
He's one of the better mathematics.
Я хочу сказати, що 2400 найкращих математиків, алгебраїстів, тригонометристів, програмістів совєтської армії зібрані у генеральний штаб саме у Москву і в Сибіру під Іркутськом є центр.
2,400 of the best mathematicians, algebraians, specialists in trigonometry, programists, they're all in Moscow and Irkutsk, in the Irkutsk region.
Із совєтських вищих учбових закладів, із фізико-математичних факультетів найкращих математиків забрали в армію.
They have basically got all the best mathematics in the army.
Задається питання, до чого готується СССР? Для чого вони це збирають?
The question now arises, what are they preparing themselves for?
Не треба забувати, що 9 років тому назад в генеральних штабах КГБ генерал-полковником управління КГБ України Федорчуком була опрацьована і представлена на ДЦК Політбюро операція «Перестройка». Саме операція «Перестройка» була розроблена українськими КГБістами. Це один із ведущих офіцерів КГБ Совєтського Союзу.
The Operation Perestroika was in fact prepared 9 years ago by General Fedorchuk, and it was presented to the Central Committee. This is 9 years ago, and it was actually prepared, as I said, by General Fedorchuk with the help of the Ukrainian KGB.
Хто займається політикою, ви побачите, що рівно 9 років тому назад на Захід потоком полилася дезінформація інфільтрована, повністю контрольована КГБ.
Anybody that's interested in politics will have noted that 10 years ago all disinformation that came into the West was all specifically done by the KGB.
Совєтське КГБ почало інфільтрувати своїх людей, не агентів КГБ, тобто освідомителів, а офіцерів КГБ, почали готувати і запускати в дисидентський рух.
The KGB not only infiltrated itself, but it was actually began to infiltrate political prisoners at that time.
Нині за кордон викинені сотні їхніх людей, які працюють, які опрацьовують інформативно Захід, а з другої сторони збирають технологію і комп'ютерну систему і переправляють все в Совєтський Союз.
Today they're actually throwing these people out that are hundreds of people that are collecting various bits, these types of information in the Soviet Union and for the Soviet Union, I beg your pardon.
Але не тільки це. 9 років тому назад, опрацьовуючи плани перестройки, був іще один план – знищити українську і прибалтійську імміграцію.
Also 9 years ago, apart from the Operation Perestroika, there was a plan that was created which the purpose of which was to destroy the Ukrainian and the Baltic emigre communities.
Непопулярна афганська війна, про яку тут мало говорять.
The unpopular Afghan war, about which so little is said of in the West.
В Совєтському Союзі витворила своєрідну психологію відношення населення до уряду.
Has created in the Soviet Union a type of psychological attitude towards the Soviet government.
В середньоазійських країнах не бувало піднісся пан-ісламізм.
In the Central Asian republics, it's actually created a feeling of pan-Slavism.
Пан-ісламізм.
Pan-Islamism, I beg your pardon.
Про це мало тут говорять, але я хочу сказати, що це є дуже поважна і велика сила, тому що ісламські народи Середньої Азії не говорять про якусь і не просять в Русь